Hey guys, how's it going? So I just finished fixing up the different pieces of the C and C++ code that had to be changed because the PHP interface had changed. And I recorded that, was about half an hour. And I didn't have the microphone on. So I just, there's no point in repeating that because you're gonna lose all the authenticity. So I'm just gonna run through what the challenges were and how I solved it. As you recall, not this guy perhaps, this guy, yeah. As you recall, we were getting a compilation error here because the C++ language has evolved over time, and the compiler was defaulting to the command line compiler was defaulting to a more current version of the C++ standard, and the compilation that I did in CLion, I had specifically asked it to be using an old standard. So when we were looking for the errors and we finished up all the errors that in the previous video, we hadn't caught the errors that show up because we're using a new version, or sorry, not a new version, a newer standard of C++. And if you recall, the message had to do with a signed integer -1 being converted to an unsigned integer without an explicit cast. So the easy way to fix that, because I didn't want to start messing around with the code. Again, our objective here is to get it working with as little messing around as possible so that we're not introducing additional side effects that will make the site stop working. I just went and found, so the original macro was, go away, was called this arginfo, and they had 2 parameters, I think, something like this. And when we go and we find that, we see that that guy calls begin arginfo x, and the -1 issue is coming from here. It's part of the Zend API macros, right? So the easy solution here was to come and instead of calling the begin arginfo, expand this in our code itself and call the info ex, and then this guy cast it. So that's what we did here. Instead of calling begin arginfo, we came here, we called the info x, and we used whatever defaults there were needed or that would naturally be expanded. And the -1, we just did a cast from a signed integer to unsigned integer. And that has got us through the compilation. And the reason why you have this issue on the C++ interface or module, and you didn't have it in the C module, is again because that's a feature of a C++ standard, not of a C standard. So there's, you know, that's just the way it rolls, whatever. So we went back and compiled, and then we run into another hiccup. And the hiccup was that when all these scripts and configuration files and make files, they don't clean up well automatically. There are some files that they produce that don't get deleted when the environment does not clean itself up automatically. So what we had to do was find which files were not being removed automatically and remove them manually. So that's what this line is here. Forceful remove of all these files. and then build config force, and then configure, and then make. And that all worked. It is going to be in your handout. And that's what the last video was. And we ended the video by running these two commands. This first, we're calling the CLI version, which is of PHP, which is the command line version. And we're asking which functions do you have, extension DVDAF, and it tells us which functions the DVDAF extension has, and the DVDAF3 extension, what functions it has. And we just very quickly, you can see, I do not recall why some of this seems to be repeated, and I do not know if they are the same or not. But there are some that there are definitely additional functions in the DVDAF3, as you can see over here. There are also functions that you say, why would you have to do a string length or a substring? And the reason why we do that is, remember, we did this many years ago, before PHP had support for Unicode. And the site runs on Unicode because of all the international titles. In Unicode, a letter, if you will, can be represented by anywhere between 1 to 3 bytes, 4 bytes, I think. And if you were to go in and say, okay, I want you to cut the string at a length of 20 bytes, well, you may hit the middle of a Unicode character. And we had to write this function so that when we're doing these operations with strings, we don't chop the middle of a Unicode character and get some weird behavior as a result. So that's why you see here things like string length, substring, and so forth. The text area to DB, DB to text area, and input functions. A lot of these has to do with just creating in one place where we are sure that all the data that comes into the site and is persistent into the database is not going to subject us to SQL injection. And you can Google SQL injection to figure out what that is. It's basically an attack vector to a website where you get the server to do something that it's not designed to do, usually nefarious. And so all the input of the site passes through this filter, and everything that's persisted to the database also has a different set of filters, so everything is in the up and up. So that's what we did, and and that was the last of it. So there were not that many bugs or not bugs, changes in the code because of moving from PHP 5.3.13 to 5.4.45, I think. There were, I think, 4 issues. Yeah, and they all been fixed. So when you get this, you can compile with 5.4.45, and 5.4.45 is easier to compile in the current version of Ubuntu than 5.3.13. That's why we did it. All right, so in the next video, so at this point, what we have is a VM where we installed packages for Apache and MySQL. We configure MySQL. We haven't configured Apache yet. And we build PHP from scratch with the DVDAF extensions, 2 modules. And we tested the connectivity between all these different pieces. So now all that remains are to put together the tree of the website, which includes all the pictures, a limited number of scripts, and all the pages, the JavaScript, and all that other stuff. And we'll do that in the next video. I'll talk to you soon later. No, I'll talk to you later. No, I'll talk to you soon. Take care.